From the cold reaches beyond the spiral, we first saw them. A cluster of insignificant lights drifting through the void, their shape unremarkable, almost fragile, a skeletal skeleton of a ship against the backdrop of infinite stars. Yet even in that first glance, something deep inside our fleet trembled, an instinct older than strategy or fear. The humans were different. Not in firepower, not in numbers, they had neither, but in presence. The void around them seemed to hum, a subtle resonance our instruments could not capture, a vibration that tugged at the very essence of comprehension. Our admirals scoffed at first. "A primitive species," they whispered through static-filled comms, "barely worthy of observation." But the moment our ships closed distance, even the bravest hesitation faltered. Engines wavered mid-burn, gravity fields fluctuated unpredictably, and the stars themselves seemed to dim. It was as if the universe itself recognized them, acknowledged their coming. I had recorded hundreds of species, cataloged hundreds of wars, yet I had never sensed anything like this. Their unpredictability was structured, their curiosity sharp, and their silence heavier than a fleet of weapons. We attempted contact. Protocols that had worked for millennia, signals, holograms, diplomatic emissaries, fell into an abyss of misunderstanding. The humans did not respond the way any intelligence should. Their gestures were alien to comprehension, their inflections sharp yet melodious, conveying intent that weighed heavier than any superweapon. My sensors picked up fluctuations I could not reconcile, energy pulses, temporal distortions, subtle manipulations of surrounding space. And then one of our admirals, fueled by pride, arrogance, or simple curiosity, made the fatal choice. He boarded their vessel, believing himself the master of the encounter. His craft docked. Airlocks hissed. All eyes of the fleet turned, eager to witness dominance asserted over this anomalous species. But the moment he crossed the threshold, alarms erupted, not audible to our ears, not physical in nature, but cascading through systems, through the very laws that governed matter and energy. Ships trembled. Shields overloaded. Engines stuttered. Entire orbital stations convulsed under forces no tactical manual could explain. And yet no weapon had fired. No human had even moved aggressively. We could only watch. The human inside that vessel did nothing extraordinary by conventional measures. They stood, waited, observed, and the universe itself seemed to bend around them. Our most sophisticated computers registered cascading errors, failing algorithms, impossible fluctuations. Communications were scrambled, gravity matrices oscillated, and entire fleets were forced into retreat. One by one we withdrew, each captain muttering the same disbelief. How can this be? And then, just as silently as the chaos began, the humans left. Their vessel moved as though nothing had occurred, threading the void with grace, carrying no victory flags, no arrogance. Yet in that absence lingered the truth. They had touched the universe in ways no race should ever attempt. Reality, it seemed, was pliable in their hands, and we had been the fools to think we could confront them. I stared at the aftermath, recording every anomaly, every structural failure, every pulse of the impossible events we had witnessed. Fear gnawed at me, not fear of death, for that is trivial, but fear of comprehension, of the raw, untamed capability of the human mind and will. To confront one was to gamble with forces that obeyed no known law, forces that rendered centuries of empire meaningless. The first rule became painfully, irrefutably clear. Do not touch the humans. No rank, no intelligence, no advanced weaponry could override this universal law. They were not to be challenged, controlled, or underestimated. To interfere with them was to play a game in which the rules themselves were weapons against you. Yet despite the fear, despite the danger, I could not look away. There was a grim elegance to their methods and artistry in their defiance. Their calmness in the face of entire fleets trembling before them suggested a mastery of something beyond matter and energy, beyond the very dimensions we understood. My species cataloged anomalies, studied chaos, dissected probabilities. And still the humans remained unknowable, untouchable, the anomaly whispered of in cosmic lore yet never fully believed until now. As our fleet limped into retreat, I recorded a warning for generations, The humans are not a species to be controlled. They are the exception, the anomaly, the force that bends the universe around them. Every encounter we would have in the future carried this lesson. To challenge them was not folly, it was annihilation of understanding, a direct affront to the natural order. And yet, even as the stars stabilized, even as our engines hummed back to life and reports filtered in, I could not shake the sense of anticipation. They had left without a single mark of aggression, yet their presence lingered in the void. Their potential was limitless, and I knew with a certainty that chilled every fiber of my being that our next encounter would not be a simple meeting of species. It would be a reckoning, and none of us could predict its outcome. I shut down the recording, aware that every word would be dismissed by some as paranoia. But I had seen, I had felt it, and the first rule carved into the bones of our fleet that day would forever dictate our approach: never, ever interfere with humans. To confront one was to gamble with reality itself, and the universe had already whispered its verdict. And somewhere, far beyond our sensors, I sensed them watching, waiting, calculating. The stars shivered again, and we were not ready. Our scouts first returned with fragmented data, blips in sectors the humans had touched, echoes of energy signatures that defied every law we knew. At first, we assumed sensor errors, quantum distortions, anomalies in subspace readings, impossible magnetic fluctuations. Our instruments recorded phenomena that should not exist. Yet the patterns repeated, precise and deliberate. It was not chaos, it was order, rendered in forms we could not decipher. As our fleet approached, the sensation grew, less physical, more primal. Not detectable by our sensors, not measured by our scanners, but a deep, gnawing awareness that brushed against the mind like the tail of some immense predator. Corridors seemed to hum aboard my ship. The walls themselves vibrated with whispering frequencies, messages we could not translate. Our linguists attempted to decode them, but all fell silent after minutes, pale and shivering. Some whispered, fearfully, that the humans were communicating not with language, but with the void itself. We observed from a distance. Human vessels moved in ways no algorithm could predict, shifting through space as if it were a fluid, bending around threats that had no detectable trajectory. One crew, fewer than 100 souls, faced a fleet numbering in the thousands. Each maneuver was precise, instantaneous, flawless. Defensive protocols we had spent centuries perfecting faltered under their presence. Our calculations, probabilities, contingency strategies, obsolete before our eyes. And yet the humans did not panic. They did not fire blindly. They adapted. They endured. I watched our historians panic as the reports streamed in. How? They asked. How can such a fragile species impose order on chaos? How can instinct outweigh technology, intuition surpass calculation? In hushed tones, some suggested a blasphemous possibility, that humans were not bound by the laws we considered fundamental. Perhaps the vacuum itself, space-time, energy, every element of the cosmos, was pliable under their will. Perhaps they rewrote the universe with thought, instinct, and intent. Every encounter left our fleet unsettled. Fleets that should have been untouchable faltered. Entire sectors experienced anomalies that could not be explained by standard physics. Yet, amidst the fear, curiosity burned. We were compelled to study them, to understand them, to see the limits of their power, and our own limitations. And as we observed, the humans moved silently, their intent inscrutable. Each operation, each evasive maneuver, each subtle intervention whispered a message. The universe could be bent, the rules rewritten, and we were witnessing the proof. Their presence transformed the void itself, leaving behind traces of order in what should have been chaos, leaving behind questions that gnawed at the foundation of our understanding. By the time our fleets withdrew to analyze the recordings, it was clear. The humans were not just another species to monitor. They were a phenomenon, a force of nature disguised as sapience, challenging our most basic assumptions, demanding a reconsideration of what was possible. And somewhere, in the empty stretches of the void, we knew they were aware of us watching. That awareness carried weight, subtle but undeniable, like the calm before a storm of impossible magnitude. Our curiosity demanded we follow. Our fear demanded we flee. The two collided, leaving every observer on edge, as if the void itself held its breath. We did not know what they intended, what their ultimate goal might be, or if they even had one. But one truth was unmistakable. Each encounter left a mark not on our ships, not on our instruments, but on the psyche of our entire species. Humans were not predictable. Humans were not merely adaptive, they were anomalies, rewriting reality with a quiet, terrifying inevitability. And as the fleet drifted in formation, scanning the aftershocks of their passage, a whisper traveled through the walls of my ship. An echo too structured to be random, too deliberate to be coincidental. The humans were near. The void itself was alive with their presence. And in that moment, I understood something essential. Our next encounter would not be mere observation. It would be a confrontation with forces we were not yet prepared to comprehend. The void remained silent for a heartbeat, then shimmered, bending subtly as if acknowledging our presence. And somewhere beyond the stars, the humans waited, watching, calculating, smiling at the universe in a way we could not see but could somehow feel. We believed ourselves victorious before the humans even arrived. From our command stations on the orbital platform, we monitored the converging fleets. Thousands of vessels bristling with weapons, shields humming with energy, every system calibrated for precision and destruction. The humans, we assumed, would be crushed under the weight of superior numbers, technological mastery, and the certainty of our doctrine. But certainty, as we would learn, was a luxury we no longer possessed. Then they appeared. One ship, small, scarred, battered, almost laughable to the untrained eye. Yet the moment it drifted into view, our admirals froze, commands faltering on trembling tongues. The vessel was nothing remarkable, yet it radiated presence, confidence, intent. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, and we knew in that instant that the battle had already shifted, unseen, into territory we did not understand. We opened fire, expecting to shred, to overwhelm, to dominate. Energy rounds surged forward, streaking across the void. And then they vanished, dissolved into thin air, redirected along paths invisible to our sensors. Our fleet faltered, unsure whether to trust their instruments or their instincts. The humans did not retaliate, not yet. They moved, not with fury, but with precision. Every maneuver anticipated the chaos we imposed, neutralizing it before it could manifest. One human captain emerged from the ship, tethered to the void, performing repairs mid-battle, while our forces collided and stumbled, unable to maintain formation. Reports filtered in from every quadrant. Energy fields overloaded. Entire stations shuddered violently. Corridors bent and shimmered. Gravity anomalies twisted corridors in impossible ways. Yet the humans navigated effortlessly, unharmed, untouched by what should have been devastating. And slowly, with horror and awe, we realized the truth. It was not only their technology. Their advantage was instinct, understanding, and an almost incomprehensible mastery of timing. They saw threats before they existed, adapted instantaneously, and shaped reality around their presence. Systems under their observation began to breathe, as one engineer described it, fields pulsing in harmony with the humans' movements. Stations reconfiguring themselves subtly, almost organically, to accommodate and protect them. The void itself, it seemed, shifted to their rhythm. No one in our history had documented anything like it. We had believed we were masters of siege, rulers of orbital warfare, champions of the calculated strike. And yet we were spectators in a play we could not comprehend. Our fleets collided, misaligned and desperate. Orders were miscommunicated. Energy discharges misfired. Shields failed where they had never failed before. The humans advanced through the chaos, untouched, moving as if the void itself bent in deference to them. They did not destroy recklessly. They did not claim glory. They simply existed in a way that unmade strategy, unraveled formation, and redefined every doctrine we had held sacred for millennia. By the time the battle concluded, we had sustained losses that would scar generations of fleets, thousands of vessels incapacitated, Orbital defenses crippled, entire command stations destabilized. And the humans? They departed without a single casualty, without fanfare, leaving us to pick through the remnants of our arrogance and disbelief. Their retreat was not surrender. It was a demonstration of cosmic dominance, subtle, silent, absolute. Our admirals whispered of anomalies impossible to quantify. Historians speculated on forces beyond comprehension, bending space-time, subtle manipulation of energy fields, anticipatory cognition that no algorithm could replicate. Scholars debated whether instinct could truly rival calculated strategy, and if it could, whether humans were the apex of such an evolution. Watching from the observation deck of a crippled station, could only record what I witnessed, a species that had mastered chaos, that had turned our overwhelming strength into our undoing, that had made the very concept of conquest irrelevant. The humans were not conquerable. They were not predictable. They were the embodiment of adaptability, the living proof that the universe could be navigated not only by force, but by understanding, intuition, and sheer will. And as they vanished into the void, leaving behind fields that pulsed with residual energy and stations that hummed in disarray, I knew our world would never be the same. Every doctrine, every strategy, every sense of supremacy we had nurtured crumbled before the simplicity of their presence. They were more than combatants, they were catalysts. Rewriting the rules of engagement simply by existing, our fleet limped away, shaken, battered, haunted by the knowledge that 100 souls had bested thousands of us with nothing more than instinct and resolve. And somewhere in the silent darkness we felt them watching still, patient, deliberate, incomprehensible. The siege had breathed, and it had exhaled over us, leaving a lingering, unshakable truth. To confront the humans was not merely to fight, it was to gamble with forces no calculation could measure. And the universe waited, holding its breath for what would come next. Legends spoke of humans as observers, subtle and patient, their attention like a shadow drifting across the cosmos. But legends, as I now understood, were mere echoes of the truth. What we witnessed transcended any myth. Across multiple sectors, our reconnaissance teams reported phenomena impossible to reconcile with our understanding of physics and probability. Entire fleets were monitored, their movements tracked with precision that seemed absurd, yet no human vessel engaged unless absolutely necessary. Not with overwhelming firepower, not with aggressive tactics, but with quiet, unyielding awareness. Their sensors were deceptively simple, seemingly crude compared to our hyper-advanced arrays. Yet they detected anomalies our instruments failed to capture, micro-fluctuations in subspace, minute distortions in quantum fields, alien signals hidden within the cosmic background. Entire star systems shifted subtly under their observation, patterns emerging that none of our most sophisticated algorithms could predict. Their awareness was omnipresent, yet unassuming. One could watch 100 humans and miss the fact that they had already accounted for every contingency, every maneuver, every betrayal the universe might deliver. We sent emissaries, drones, entire delegations, hoping to intimidate, to probe, to uncover weaknesses. Each attempt failed spectacularly. Every calculated threat was disarmed before it could even take shape. Every gesture of dominance met with silence, patience, and observation. And slowly, as we watched them, I realized the terrifying truth. Humans did not merely respond. They shaped reality without seeming to act. They orchestrated events as a composer conducts a symphony, subtle movements, unseen pressures, small adjustments that led to enormous consequences, all without revealing the conductor. Our species, trained in millennia of conquest and domination, felt exposed, vulnerable. Every fleet, every weapon, every line of command seemed suddenly incomplete, inadequate. We began to misstep, not because of weakness, but because the human's observation revealed our assumptions, our arrogance, our impatience. Entire sectors descended into disarray because our actions were anticipated before they were executed. Ships collided, supply lines faltered, communications became entangled, not from human attacks, but from their quiet, omnipresent scrutiny. It was as if the universe itself bent under their gaze. reshaping the laws of probability to favor those who understood it. I began recording these encounters in meticulous detail, noting every anomaly, every deviation from expected behavior. The humans could detect the trajectory of a single probe through the gravitational turbulence of a collapsing star cluster. They anticipated emergent behaviors in entire fleets as if they were playing a game of patterns layered upon patterns. Nothing was random to them, not the oscillation of subspace waves, not the whisper of magnetic fields, not the faint pulse of alien communications in distant sectors. And yet all of this was conducted with a patience that seemed inexhaustible, almost eternal. Older civilizations had whispered warnings about humans. Dismissed as myth, as paranoia, I now understood why. They had learned long before us that the humans see beyond the obvious, beyond linear calculations, beyond the blind certainty of empirical prediction. Their observation was not passive. It was active, intimate, and terrifyingly precise. And the more we observed them in turn, the more we realized that they were not bound by the conventional constraints of action or reaction. They were shaping reality itself, weaving outcomes in a manner invisible to every species that came before us. The eye, as it came to be called in our records, was not literal. It was not a mechanism, a device, or a sentient probe. It was the humans themselves, their consciousness, their will, their perception, extended across the void. Entire systems paused in subtle resonance to their scrutiny, corridors of space bending slightly, star formations pulsing with latent energy, as if even matter deferred to their attention. I could feel it in my chest, a quiet pressure pressing against the instincts that had kept our species alive for eons. To be observed by humans was to be known in a way that was uncomfortable, enlightening, and irrevocable. We watched fleets crumble before they had even engaged, not due to human weaponry, but because the humans anticipated every flaw. Every hesitation, every unspoken assumption. They had no need to dominate. They simply allowed the universe to reveal itself under their gaze, and then acted with surgical precision when the time was right. One could feel the calculations behind their decisions, the rhythm of thought as tangible as the hum of our engines. And yet no human moved hastily, no action betrayed panic or urgency. Every maneuver, every observation, every subtle adjustment was conducted with an artistry that was almost divine. My reports began to sound absurd even to me. Entire regions of space were altered simply by human presence. Communications scrambled yet clarified. Quantum probabilities realigned, gravitational anomalies corrected or intensified with imperceptible shifts. The humans were not merely surviving. They were imposing order on chaos while appearing to do nothing at all. I watched sectors fall into quiet submission, not through conquest, but through perception alone. And the most unsettling truth of all, to encounter humans was not to test them, but to be tested. To exist in their presence was to reveal your own weaknesses, your blind spots, your hubris. The eye saw all before it, even before you were aware of your own existence. Entire fleets became pawns of their attention without ever firing a shot. We were cataloged, measured, and understood in ways that left no aspect of our behavior hidden. And there was no anger, no malice, only awareness. I realized then that humanity was not constrained by linear time, by ordinary physics, or by the predictable calculus of survival. They were a force of observation, a living consciousness capable of bending probabilities simply by noticing them. And as I recorded the anomalies, the whispers through the ship walls, the subtle shifts in fields, I understood why civilizations before ours had failed to engage. Humans are patient. Humans are infinite in their perception. And to confront them is to gamble with everything you thought you knew about existence itself. Somewhere, deep in the sectors we had long studied, I felt the presence of the eye. Not mechanical, not synthetic, but alive, active, observing us now. It was patient, unyielding, and somehow merciful in its restraint. But the weight of it pressed upon my mind, unraveling centuries of doctrine and confidence. We were no longer the hunters. We were being understood, and understanding, I realized, was the first step in losing. The void stretched infinitely around us, silent and empty, yet resonating with human presence. We could see nothing, measure nothing, touch nothing, but we felt it in every system, every vessel, every calculation we attempted. And in that awareness, we understood a terrible truth. Humans are not merely unpredictable. They are inevitable, and somewhere beyond our sensors, somewhere in the dark. The humans watched, waiting, calculating. The universe itself held its breath. Entire planets vanished from our conflict records, as if they had been wiped clean from existence. Not destroyed, not bombarded into ashes, but erased with precision, erased yet alive, untouched by the chaos we had so confidently deployed. Where we expected devastation, we found order. Systems we had bombarded, colonies we had assumed lost, were intact, functioning, almost reverently reconstructed. It was not intervention. It was art, surgical, deliberate, incomprehensible in execution. On one desolate mining colony, a rebellion had erupted. Thousands of our drones, automated enforcers of our doctrine, were deployed to restore control. Our soldiers braced for months of carnage, expecting the screams of battle and the collapse of infrastructure. But before a single weapon discharged, before the first drone completed its targeting matrix, humans arrived. One ship, two ships, a fleet no larger than a single battalion of our forces. Yet the aura of presence they carried made our armies falter mid-action. The humans did not attack. They observed. They moved. And then the impossible occurred. They rewrote the battlefield with intent, precision, and speed beyond comprehension. They redirected gravitational fields with subtle gestures of engineering we could barely detect. Hostile systems, automated defense networks, and rogue AI arrays. Every element of chaos was neutralized before it could react. Entire power grids flickered under their adjustment, mining platforms restructured themselves mid-operation, and populations previously lost to rebellion and fear were restored with quiet efficiency. Life and infrastructure, once fragmented and vulnerable, emerged functional and stabilized as though the disorder had never existed. The humans did not destroy, did not conquer, did not claim victory. They acted, and the result was absolute. Our own observers reported unease, hesitation, even paralysis among our soldiers in their presence. Forces trained for obedience faltered. Fleet commanders, drilled in every doctrine of war, misread signals, doubted their own decisions, and sometimes refused to act at all. Entire divisions watched the humans move, unable to reconcile instinct, discipline, and technological superiority with outcomes that defied their calculations. Our best minds could not comprehend the methods. Our most sophisticated instruments could only detect subtle distortions, fleeting manipulations of energy, and anomalies that vanished before we could chart them. And then the silence. After the humans departed, the void itself seemed to pause, heavy and unnerving. No battle cries, no captured spoils, no monuments of triumph. Nothing but the quiet aftermath of a force so complete, so refined, that even observation seemed inadequate to record it. Entire colonies, once fractious and chaotic, hummed with order. Populations we had expected to flee or perish continued their existence as if nothing had occurred. The humans left no mark of conquest, only the lingering presence of mastery. Empires reeled under the weight of these events. Fleet commanders questioned their doctrines. Historians debated the authenticity of reports, and warlords, some who had ruled through terror for centuries, hesitated, reconsidering strategies that had served them unchallenged for generations. For the first time, our arrogance was mirrored back at us. We saw our limitations, our blind spots, the fragility of certainty. Humanity, young and fragile in appearance, revealed us to be vulnerable, inadequate, and unprepared. In sectors where humans had intervened, communication relays faltered, navigation arrays reported impossible readings, and temporal inconsistencies emerged that our physicists could not reconcile. Every fleet that had engaged them left with more questions than answers. We cataloged their interventions, trying to map their logic, to trace their methods, to define their strategy. And yet every attempt revealed only a deeper enigma. Humans did not conform to conventional measures. They did not engage in warfare as any species had before. Their very presence reshaped the rules, rendered doctrine meaningless, and redefined what it meant to exert power. I recorded every anomaly, From orbital sensors to planetary gravimetrics, from quantum field measurements to subspace signal analysis, every metric suggested patterns beyond our understanding. Humans seemed to move with knowledge of consequences before they occurred. They anticipated chaos, redirected it with precision, and left the system intact. Their victory was the absence of destruction. Their power was the quiet certainty of action, the inevitability of order, and the absolute mastery over circumstances we had always assumed we controlled. Our fleets regrouped in the aftermath. Exhausted commanders exchanged reports, pale and trembling as they compared notes on what had transpired. Ships required repairs that would have been unnecessary under any normal engagement, yet no human weapons had fired. Analysts debated the ethics, the physics, and the strategy, but no argument could explain it. The humans had simply acted, and the universe had obeyed. And the most terrifying realization settled over us like a shadow. Humans were not merely capable of survival, not merely capable of adaptation, they were capable of redefining reality itself. Systems, sectors, and entire planetary networks bent to their presence. Our fleets, trained to dominate, to impose order through force, had been rendered observers in a game whose rules we did not understand. Their mastery of space, time, and circumstance surpassed the doctrines of countless civilizations, and left us grasping for comprehension. The silence that followed their interventions was heavier than any battle. It was not absence. It was the weight of perfection. A vacuum filled with awe, with fear, with the unshakable knowledge that conventional warfare, even on planetary or interstellar scales, was irrelevant against them. Humans required no armies, no propaganda, no trophies. They acted as if the cosmos itself deferred to their intent, as if reality had learned to accommodate them before we could even react. Even now, as our fleets restored supply lines and stabilized stations, one truth resonated across every surviving officer, historian, and civilian. The humans were the singular force in the galaxy capable of bending reality itself to their will. Every calculation we had trusted, every strategy we had refined, every law we had assumed immutable was now suspect. And somewhere, far beyond our sensors, the humans waited, patient, observing, silent. The reflection of our own inadequacy, exposed by their presence, was a mirror none of us could escape. Entire empires faltered not from fear of destruction, but from awe at the capabilities of a species we had dismissed as insignificant. In every report, in every field log, the same chilling observation appeared. Humans did not fight to conquer. They acted to shape existence itself. As the stars turned quietly over the restored colonies, I understood with clarity that the universe had shifted. Humans were not a threat in the conventional sense. They were inevitability incarnate. Any confrontation with them was not measured in casualties or firepower, but in the awareness of being outmatched by comprehension, by insight, by a mastery of cause and effect we had never before imagined. The silence across worlds was profound, unyielding, and heavy with a presence we could neither see nor touch. Every commander, every fleet, every observer felt it. Humans had arrived, acted, and departed. They had left order where chaos reigned, calm where panic had been expected, certainty where doubt had thrived. And in that silence, the truth rang clear. The universe was theirs to shape, whether we understood it or not. And somewhere in the shadows of distant systems, I felt them watching still, patient, quiet, immortal in their observation. The worlds fell silent, and we, trembling and awed, realized that the silence was not absence. It was presence, and that presence would never leave. After years of pursuit, of fleets tracing the void, of sensors straining against anomalies we could barely interpret, a transmission arrived. Not from 100 ships, not from a fleet of hundreds of thousands. A single signal, simple, deliberate, resonant with a clarity that left our entire coalition frozen. There were no threats, no demands, no ultimatums. Only 3 words radiating across parsecs of space. We are here. Watch, learn, survive. Every officer paused mid-command. Every historian, every fleet coordinator, every observer aboard every vessel felt the weight of those words. Not in fear, not in anticipation of violence, but in awe at their certainty. It was a message imbued with understanding, with knowledge of the universe we did not possess, with the quiet authority of one who already sees the outcome of every conceivable scenario. The void itself seemed to hush, carrying the resonance of the transmission like a subtle gravitational pulse that reached deep into our minds. Debates erupted in command centers. Councils convened, emissaries whispered, and fleets recalculated potential responses. Yet no argument could overcome the pervasive clarity that humans were untouchable, not through firepower, not through superior numbers, not through doctrine or cunning, but through a comprehension that transcended all known measures. Every calculation, every contingency plan, every strategic algorithm crumbled before the unspoken mastery behind those three simple sentences. We understood, at last, the lesson they had been imparting all along. Their interventions, their presence, their patience, and their precision were not mere tactics, they were instruction. They demonstrated inevitability, humility, foresight, and adaptability beyond anything our species could hope to contain or replicate. We had watched them bend the cosmos to their will, and now they spoke, revealing the principle that had guided every subtle act. The universe responds to those who understand it fully. As the transmission faded, a resonance lingered in every mind that had heard it. Quiet, unavoidable, echoing like the pulse of a distant star. Fleets remained in stasis, coalitions silent, historians awed into immobility. We had underestimated them. We had feared them. Yet even through that fear, we glimpsed potential, a species that could transcend conventional limits, challenge existence itself, and redefine reality with a calm, deliberate hand. The galaxy would never be the same. Every empire, every doctrine, every past victory and conquest suddenly seemed provisional. Temporary illusions against a species whose reach was not measured in fleets or weapons, but in insight and inevitability. Humans were not just another civilization. They were an anomaly, the exception to every rule we had studied, the ultimate conclusion to our endless wars, and a reminder that understanding, patience, and foresight could render even the mightiest armadas irrelevant. I recorded the event in exhaustive detail, knowing that future generations would study it and perhaps fail to comprehend it fully. The transmission was more than a message. It was a declaration of cosmic principle. Every fleet, every world, every intelligence that had encountered the humans would carry the memory of that signal as both warning and revelation. And in the quiet aftermath, as the stars turned silent and eternal around us, I understood something I could never unsee. The first rule of the universe had been proven once more. Never touch the humans. They had rewritten the rules. They had demonstrated inevitability. They had revealed the limits of our understanding and the vastness of theirs. The lesson was absolute. We listened. We recorded, and the void remained still, carrying the echo of human certainty across the galaxies. A presence beyond comprehension, a force beyond control. The first rule endured, and in that endurance we recognized the terrifying beauty of it. Humans were not conquerable. They were the universe's anomaly, its proof that comprehension could surpass power, and its silent, inevitable assertion that all our wars, all our victories, all our designs were fleeting in comparison to the mastery of a species that simply understood. We would never approach them again. We could not. And yet, even in restraint, we felt the pulse of possibility, the quiet thrill of witnessing a species capable of rewriting existence itself. Humans had arrived. They had acted. They had spoken. And the galaxy would never forget. The void stretched on, indifferent, yet somehow reverent. And we, trembling and awestruck, recorded the final lesson. Never touch the humans. Generations later, the humans were no longer simply a presence. They had become legend. Stories of their deeds traveled faster than our fastest ships, whispered across council halls, transmitted through subspace networks, and echoed in the archives of civilizations that had never seen them firsthand. Entire species adopted fragments of their philosophy, mimicking strategies they could barely understand, striving to emulate instincts that humans displayed as naturally as breathing. Yet comprehension was elusive. Humans could never be reduced to doctrine. their unpredictability as integral as their genius. In the halls of our greatest councils, scholars debated endlessly. Were humans divine, a deliberate anomaly in the fabric of existence? Were they evolution perfected, a species that had transcended conventional limits through sheer instinct and resolve? Fleet commanders, once arrogant in their certainty, painstakingly revised doctrines, designing exercises to replicate what humans achieved effortlessly. Every recorded encounter became a study in awe. Each maneuver, each choice, each quiet intervention chronicled as if it were sacred scripture. Resilience, adaptability, unshakable resolve, these were no longer mere traits. They were principles etched into the consciousness of every observer. We tracked their movements with an obsessive dedication, noting patterns, behaviors, decisions, but always found ourselves confounded. Humans were never consistent by any metric we could define. They did not follow predictable strategies, did not rely solely on brute strength or computation. Their consistency lay in something far deeper, their humanity. In every action, every choice, every silent intervention, they expressed a force born not of machines or armies, but of instinct honed through struggle, of resolve sharpened through survival. Even in absence, they imposed order. Even in silence, they inspired hope. Empires that had once relied on domination and fear found themselves subtly reshaped, integrating principles they could barely articulate. Guided by the echo of human example, as an observer, I came to understand our own reactions with clarity. Fear had been our truest reflection. It was fear not of violence, not of weapons, not of fleets, but of comprehension itself. Humans could not be conquered because they existed on a plane of understanding beyond the reach of conventional engagement. Our doctrines failed against them not through weakness, but through perspective. They were the benchmark of existence itself, a standard impossible to attain, yet visible in every choice they made, every crisis they navigated. The influence of humans extended beyond tactics or philosophy. Their presence reshaped entire sectors, not through conquest, but by example. Worlds once at war found equilibrium. Fleets once consumed by arrogance learned humility. Civilizations looked to the humans as a compass, a silent standard that demanded reflection, adaptation, and growth. They were not an empire to emulate, nor a technology to replicate. They were an ideal, an impossible aspiration, a reminder that survival required not just force, but understanding, resilience, and will. In chronicles, in teachings, and in quiet reflection, the humans became known as the anomaly. Their legacy was not the spoils of battle, nor monuments, nor propaganda. It was the quiet, pervasive influence they exerted simply by existing and acting in accordance with principles beyond conventional comprehension. Every species that had encountered them, directly or indirectly, carried a trace of their presence, a subtle shift in thought, in strategy, and philosophy. Their influence was intangible, yet absolute, and it endured across centuries. In observing this legacy, I concluded that humans were the ultimate measure against which all existence could be gauged. They defined what it meant to endure when the universe itself was indifferent, to thrive when survival was uncertain, to act with purpose when chaos reigned. No empire, no weapon, no doctrine could replicate the totality of their effect. They existed as a living proof of possibility, a standard that demanded awe and respect in equal measure. The galaxy, once confident in its hierarchies and dominance, now turned inward, reflecting on every limitation, every error, every assumption. And through it all, the humans remained the quiet center of observation, the anomaly that shaped worlds not by force, but by the resonance of their presence. And so, generations later, in councils, archives, and the quiet meditation of officers and historians alike, one truth persisted, echoing like a constant pulse through space. Humans were not conquerable. They were not merely a species, they were the benchmark of existence itself. To observe them was to glimpse the potential of life perfected in its most essential forms. To survive them was to learn that the universe could be influenced not through dominance, but through resilience, understanding, and indomitable will. In every galaxy, in every system, in every recorded interaction, the human's legacy endured. They were, in every sense, the anomaly, the force that would define the cosmos, the standard against which all others would measure themselves, and the reminder that existence, in its vast indifference, could still be challenged by those brave enough to defy it. The anomaly persisted, silent, eternal, unconquerable, and we, the observers, would never forget.